Today with another amazing guest. We actually are late. We were supposed to do this at 11 o'clock this morning, and we actually had a great conversation for 20 minutes before we started this podcast. So before I introduce my guest, just a few things I want to cover. If you are getting value from this show, make sure you are liking it. Make sure you are sharing it. Make sure you're rating and reviewing it on iTunes or wherever you listen. Comments always mean a lot to me. I do read them. Make sure you are sharing the comments and stuff like that when you're rating the show. And then follow me on Instagram. I want to make sure I'm building my Instagram. So follow me on Instagram at The Real Don Costa as well. And of course, my usual plug, if you want to be part of a growing community where it's about us building you into who you need to be and helping you build a better business, then go to beinthisroom.com and check out what we have going on with the Inner Circle Elite. So today, my guest is Chris Arnold. How are you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing well, man. I actually really enjoyed our 20-minute conversation. It was worth it.
It was good. Yeah. We're going to have to.
It got deep fast, real fast.
It did. So let's talk about how you got into real estate investing. So we didn't talk about that. We went in a totally different direction, which was cool because we're in a lot of similar things we're doing business wise. But real estate investing, how did you get into that? And why did you get into it? What is your business about, really?
Yeah, so it was the first thing I got into when I finished up grad school. And so people were like, well, what'd you go to grad school for? I actually got a master's in theology. And the first people I always they give me that double take, right? Like, shouldn't you be like a pastor or like on the mission field or something like that? But for me, I had a really powerful moment. I was finishing up my degree and I was sitting in Chick-fil-A, literally eating a chicken biscuit. And I was looking up like on the mural that Kathy Truitt like has in his Chick-fil-A's on how they've utilized that business to impact the world. And it was the first time that like the seed got planted for me. Like, I really feel like I'm being led to do business, to create that as a vehicle in order to impact the world. And so at that time, it's like, well, what are the vehicles that are available? And really all I understood was, I could get into the stock market or I could get into real estate. And I'm like, I think I like real estate. And so I started on the brokerage side first and built that up. Boutique brokerage out of Dallas, Fort Worth. And then you know how it goes from there, right? Then you start fixing and flipping, you start wholesaling, you launch a mastermind, you kind of just start going down that road of all the great things that you can do in real estate, which is one of the reasons I love it. You have so many different options.
Yeah, there's a kind of a plug and play for everybody, whatever fits for you, whether you're multifamily or you like the little stuff or big deals. I mean, it's cool. Yeah, definitely. Keeps your attention, which is good for me who is ADD.
I
for
agree.
Sure. So,
you gotta be careful. Sometimes there's too many shiny objects in real estate. You gotta stay focused.
So let's I think you're going to be open about this question, so I'm going to throw it out there. What were some of your struggles? Like, what were some of the things that you ran into getting going in real estate? Because a lot of people always talk about the highlights and what's great about it. What were some of the struggles you went through, the moments where you felt like you were walking through sludge, doing a whole lot of work but not getting anywhere?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, the struggle was I had a degree in theology, so I knew nothing about business.
Okay,
so
fair.
I didn't go get an MBA. And so although I understood leadership, which was one of the key things I actually took away from my seminary experience, I didn't know anything about like how to run a business, like nothing at all. And so I can tell you for the first few years, one of the biggest struggles I had was just like getting down the fundamentals. And I feel like some people step in with more business experience and they can kind of take off faster. But that was definitely a challenge. And then you always remember that moment before you ever get that first employee, like what it's like you're getting up. I remember at that time I was on the agency side. So I'm pulling expired records. I'm starting my calls at 7:40 a.m. Right. I'm going out, I'm taking a listing, I'm coming back, I'm putting it in the system myself. And it's just like, this is crazy, but you're literally wearing every hat in the organization until you can start to build a team. So I remember those days. But luckily I was like 25. So it definitely helped to be young and not married and not having any kids.
Yeah, definitely. And it is a lot for people to kind of go through and learn and stuff like that. So were you a natural leader when you started hiring and growing a team? What was that like? Did it fit like a glove, or were you like most of us where it took some trial and error to figure out how to manage people?
So I feel like from a giftedness standpoint, leadership came from that, right? I really do believe that's one of the gifts I have. We all have gifts, right? Things
Right.
that we just kind of have that are natural, but it wasn't polished. And I can remember those times of making those early leadership mistakes. And I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I said something to that particular employee that just like crushed them, right? Or, I had a blind spot. And all of us have to go through that of like revealing those leadership blind spots. And luckily, as you grow a team, I think the most important thing is a team around you that's willing to come in and tell you those blind spots because you see them. And so, man, I remember the heartache of that, of like, man, I really missed it that time. And those pain moments, as well I do, Don,
Mhm.
they singe in our hearts and we don't forget those pain moments. And that's how we grow.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah, I'm glad you're willing to share that. So I want to do more of that on this podcast. Is really kind of hit home that it's not always easy, but it's once you get there, it's so worth it. So I'm
Oh
assuming you feel
man,
the
it's
same way, right?
hard in the
Yeah.
beginning. It's
Yeah.
really hard for
Right.
sure.
So cool. All right. So we're going to talk about the title of the show, which is that marketing method that everybody knows about and doesn't use, and that's why you're here today. So let's get into that. Let's talk about that. What marketing methods you feel like work in that one in particular. So let's jump into that. So tell me what you got there, and let's share that secret, get it out there, and take a deep dive into it.
Absolutely. So the marketing channel everyone knows about, but nobody's using, believe it or not, is radio. And people go, Radio? I mean, hasn't that been around forever? Yes, it has. And I think the first question like pops in people's head, well, do people still listen to the radio? Don't they just like have Spotify on their phone or Pandora? And I always have to remind people that your demographic for most people in the country is over the age of 50.
Mhm.
And yes, they still listen to radio. And no, they do not have Spotify downloaded on the brand newest iPhone version that's out there. And so, if your target audience is over the age of 50, radio is what they listen to. And they watch TV. Those two things have not changed with that generation.
So let's beat that up because I have had multiple businesses in my career. I've had restaurants, I've had real estate companies, I've had cell phone stores. I'm an entrepreneur, and that's just through learning how to be a business owner. I went through several iterations and reinventions of business, and so I have advertised in newspaper and radio, and just about every platform depending on the business that I was in. Um, why do you know feels the wrong word, why do you know that radio works for the real estate investor, right? Because that's not generally on our radar. So break that down for me, tell me what it is that we're missing, best practices, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So, one of the reasons I know it works is because I've been doing it for 9 years.
Okay.
And over the years, I mean, Don, as I do, like if you're in the game for that long, you have literally tried every type of marketing that's out there. Some work, some don't. The ones that work, they change. Example, direct mail. I'm in Dallas, Fort Worth. I call it the direct mail crash of 2008. When you walk into somebody's home and they literally have like 50 postcards stacked up on their table. The one lead generation piece that I have kept for that long because it's been dependable and it's been consistent has been radio. And then I also know that it's true because guys that I have helped set it up around the country have come back and said, man, this is one of the best pieces I've ever set up. Because, I mean, a couple things. It's set it and forget it, right? Let's compare to direct mail. You got to tweak your postcard. You got to build your list, right? You're constantly haggling and dealing with the mail company and so forth. Once you get radio up and going, the company itself, the radio station manages it for you. And it's pretty much a set it and forget it, other than tweaking and then cutting off any lower producing radio stations and just top grading to the better ones. And so experientially, that's the main thing, is because it's been dependable for that long for us.
So what are some best practices? Because I'm assuming you can't just go and buy some ad space on a radio station and have it be successful for you. Is there like lead time? Do you need to invest a certain amount of money or time into getting the message out there, repetitiveness of the message and consistency before it starts to produce fruit? Can you just throw that against the wall and get a big fish? I mean, how does that typically look?
Yeah, so I'll kind of break that down because there's a few good questions in there, right? So the first thing is when you launch on radio, you don't have to wait like 6 months to start getting a return. So let's compare that to cold calling, which works. Nothing wrong with cold calling, but we know that it's about 6 months to really start to get a return on calling all of those leads. With radio, you are dropping on a listenership that has never heard this ad before. And so when you launch on radio, calls start coming in the first week without question. And you got to remember, this is an audience that's not list dependent. I don't care if you do ringless voicemail, text blast, direct, whatever you do, cold call. The reason that it's saturated is everybody's fighting over the same list. They're just utilizing different methods to go after that list. When you go to radio, these are people that might not have ever gotten a postcard before. They might not be on everyone's text blast list. And so that's one of the key differentiators we see is that it launches pretty quick. Now, if you're talking about like going in, like you just throw up a radio station, no, there's an absolute formula and science to this because you got to answer all the questions. Do I run a 60-second spot or a 30-second spot? Do I record the ad myself or have somebody else record it, right? On top of that, when do I play those ads? Should I do those at late at night, in the morning, Saturdays and Sundays? Like the list of variables that are involved in radio just goes on and on. And if you don't have all of those variables lined up correctly, then it's not going to work at the level that it should.
Okay. What are the KPIs on radio? Like the average cost per deal? Do you have like for you? I'm assuming you're.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you exactly what they are.
Okay.
So the no BS, right?
Right.
So I'm going to give you two answers to that question because it depends on how much money you're spending. So for us in Dallas Fort Worth, we spend $27,500 a month on radio, and that's over about 6 to 7 radio stations. So we always consistently, and again, the KPI that matters is dollar per dollar return. And if you're listening, like, what is that? For every dollar you spend, how many dollars do you get back? Mm-hmm. And any CFO will tell you that if you have a decent marketing budget, like over $5,000, if you can maintain a 1 to 3 to $1 to $4 return, that is good. It's consistent. And so for us in Dallas Fort Worth, we always land right around $3.50. And it's just stayed that way, consistent. Now, one month might be $3.90, another one might be $3.10, but it always averages out to about $3.50. Now, for people I've helped set it up that have marketing budgets under $5,000, right? $2,000 a month, something like that. Don, you know that the law of averages works in their favor, right? Because they're spending less. And so they always report back to me at a smaller budget level at that. They're getting about a 1 to 5 to 1 to 7 return. So for every dollar they spend, they're getting $5 to $7 back. And those are the true no BS numbers with radio.
Okay. So it pops in my head. So why not spend less? Right. Obviously you're talking about overall volume, right? So it ends up being
because you want to scale. I mean, if you want your budget to be,
I'm just messing with you. I'm messing with you on that.
I'll knock that one out of the park if you want to tee it up.
Yeah, I know the, so, and I want to point out what you said about, because a lot of people, when they think KPIs, key performance indicators, so that you haven't heard it before, on direct mail, you're tracking like, okay, you spend X amount of dollars. How many times does that make your phone ring? How many times does that turn into a lead? If they call, how many times does that lead turn into appointments turn into contracts, and contracts turn to close? But one of the things that I want people to understand about any marketing channel, I think people get hung up on, well, I spent $30,000 like you on radio, but I only got one contract. Well, that one contract might have cost you $30,000. This is a huge exaggeration example, but if that dollar amount profit is 1 to 3 or 1 to 4, that's really all that matters, is what you're making on the money you spent. So if you spent $30,000 to get one deal, which is crazy, but if that happened and you ended up making $90,000, that's totally worth it. Right. Agreed. So I just want people to understand, when you're looking at marketing, you got to be looking at your dollar for dollar return. That's really where the prize is at.
And I encourage people, you should know how many leads you're getting. We track cost per lead, cost per closing, or cost per acquisition. You got to know all that stuff. But if you line up 10 people, those numbers are going to be all over the map. What you're looking for is what's consistently coming out the back end on dollar per dollar return, because those numbers are going to vary tremendously.
Right. So it's an important aspect of it. So Okay, so again, I'm going to pry a little bit. Is it best practice to do like multiple radio stations? You talked about like leveling up on the radio stations, but do you find that you start to concentrate like one station in a market, or do you find that it's best to kind of sprinkle it around at a few?
Yeah. So the way we set it up to kind of like give some details, right, which we don't mind doing, is when we go onto a station, we want to advertise 100 times per month on that station. So that is literally, if you break that down, 25 spots per week. And so the methodology is you go in and you launch your station at 100 spots per month. And now you've got what we call the full frequency that you want. You don't need to advertise any more than that because they are hearing your message loud and clear consistently. And once that's up and going and you start to get some closings, then it's kind of the old Dave Ramsey snowball, right? He does it for debt. I'm just using it for building. But it's this idea that, man, that's good. We're getting a return. Then you go and add on the second station, the third, and so forth. And so you just snowball that thing as it gets bigger. And so, yeah, you definitely want to do invest one station at a time before growing. Unless you got a bigger budget, you can start with two or three, which is not a problem.
Okay. I'll be the first to admit I do not do radio in my business for advertising. So it's always been it's something I'm curious about when it comes to running radio for buying houses. So the reason why I say that is not to say anything negative about it. I think there's a positive result. The reason why I'm mentioning that I don't do it is because I don't necessarily know the questions asked. So I'm teeing you up for, is there
Yeah.
anything that I'm not asking that you feel like we should be sharing with the audience?
Oh, without question. So I do want to go to the fact of why people are not doing it. Because here's the question that everyone's asking: if radio is so good, then why is everyone not doing it?
Mhm.
That's the bottom line question that people are
Right.
asking. I'll tell you exactly why. Number one, and it's assumptions. Number one is I don't think it's affordable. I automatically assume that if I want to get up on radio, I got to start with a budget of like 10 grand a month. That is not true. The very first station that I picked up for $1,500 a month. And Don, I know you're doing the math. So you're saying, well, Chris, if you're running 100 spots, that means you are running 60-second spots at $15 every 60 seconds. Yes. And that is one of the things that people don't realize. We buy our radio like we buy our houses at a wholesale discounted price. It does not change. And if you buy the house right at a discount, then everything else behind that will fall into place. And the same is true about radio. So that's one thing. The second thing is it's what you said. It's like a black hole. The worst thing you can do is call up a radio station directly and ask them to send you a package. The sales rep does not work for you. They work for the station.
Mhm.
And as we have coached people all around the country, like I have to tell them this, they are probably going to come back at 3 to 4 times what we're willing to pay because they're trying to sell you a retail price. That is their job. If they can get you to pay 3 to 4 times, they'll get you to do it. That's their job. And so on the converse side of that, the flip side of that, what we do is we go in and we negotiate at a very discounted rate. But people, they don't understand all the variables. And so they go to a rep, they way overpay for it by 3 to 4 times, and then it just doesn't work. Or thirdly, it's like, I don't even know how to tackle that. So I'm just going to stay away from it because I don't even understand anything about it. And, as I do, the best way to go and set something up is to have an already built out roadmap that's proven in a blueprint.
Right. And I will tell you that there was something you said in there about going to a rep and in the not working for your business. One of my biggest issues with like newspaper and radio when I was in other businesses was it became very apparent very quick that they didn't understand my business, the dynamics of my business, the customer of my business. All they were doing is selling ad space. And they were selling ad space, obviously, in the best interest of the radio. So having an expert on your side is very important. Having an expert that understands the nuances of our business and what's going to make the particular advertising successful is important. And that's not going to be the rep from whatever the TV station, radio station, or newspaper. All they're doing is they're selling space. So
Exactly. And what you said is important. Like if I'm going to sell this widget or I'm going to sell this service that's different than real estate, you're going to actually have a different program on how you advertise on the radio. So if you're going in to find discounted property, there is a very specific way on how you set up your radio program. And someone that's selling something else on radio, like, and I know this because when I was doing retail, and I was utilizing radio to get listings. My entire program was like 180 different from the way I go about to utilize radio to find discounted properties. And they don't know at the sales station. They have no idea. They'll make you think they know, but they don't know your business.
They don't. So very, very cool. So you've been doing this for 9 years very successfully. Do you sprinkle any other marketing in around it, or is this your primary source?
Oh, absolutely. Again, I think you have to have a few pillars to stand on, right? You don't want to have too less, and you don't want to have too many and not really be good at any of them. So we rely on 4 within our business. Radio, obviously. We do online marketing. We do direct mail. And then lastly, we do a lot of wholesaling or JVing.
Okay.
And
Perfect.
Those 4 pillars drive all of our deals.
What advice would you give somebody just starting out in this business? If somebody wanted to just get going, what's some advice that you'd like to share with them?
Yeah, I mean, so I think the first thing you got to do is ask yourself, what type of lead source do I want in my business? Because Don, I think you've learned over time, there's lead sources that work. It just might not be right for you. Does that make sense? Like,
absolutely.
Do I, like, I'm going to use this one, text blasting. Does it work? Absolutely. Does it work for me? No, because I don't want to spam a bunch of people and then my team feels sleazy about doing that and regulate. Again, that's a preference though. If you're doing text blasting, it's working, do it, right? So what I mean by is you have to filter through your own brain what you're looking for. So some characteristics to consider with radio as a filter, because it's like dating. Like if you're going to marry someone, it's good to have a list of these are the qualities I'm looking for. And I believe the same is true with lead generation. One of the best things you can do is write out the qualities that you're looking for in your lead generation. We actually have like 12 criteria that we look at when we filter lead generation through it. But with radio, some things that people might not realize to consider. Number 1, celebrity status. You don't get that on a bandit sign. You don't get that on direct mail because you're probably not putting your company on there unless you want it to be hated. On radio, you actually put your company on there and it builds yourself and your brand, and it does it in a respectable way, so much so that you get celebrity status. This is why we have movie celebrities. There's something that happens in the mind of people that see you on television or hear you on the radio. They elevate you to celebrity status. And yes, it can happen in your business. The second thing you get with that is instant credibility, which I think is crucial because people automatically assume, well, if Don is advertising on the radio, then he must know what he's doing because he's on the radio. People make that conclusion immediately, and that's important. The other thing is 100% inbound, right? All you got to do is answer the phone when it rings. And I don't know about you, Don, but I prefer to have calls coming in than marketing sources in which there's a ton of outbound. And I'm saying outbound doesn't work, but those are a lot more work. I rather just let the leads come to me and answer the phone. So I think that that's probably another important piece. And probably the last thing that I would say is, I think that it's probably the most automated thing I've set up, right? I've done other marketing channels that require a lot of maintenance, both front end and back end. So let's contrast to direct mail. Direct mail, really high volume, but really low quality of lead. And you have to build a back end team to deal with all of that. Radio's on the other side. It's a lower volume of call, but it's actually one of the highest quality leads that we've ever been able to generate to date. Because think about it. If someone's driving down the radio and they call you off an ad, not because you spammed them in their mailbox or whatever, they're actually serious. You don't get hate calls off of, we've never gotten a hate call off of radio, which is fantastic. So you get rid of all of that, I don't know the word, I'm just gonna say crap that goes around some of that other stuff in the sense of leads that just aren't valuable. They're just calling to be angry with you.
So yeah, and okay, how do I put this? I think the question has left the building because I had a question for you in that and it's gone. But kind of circling back to the best practices of radio and whatnot and that kind of thing. Okay, got my question back.
It came. You're just waiting for it to come back in.
I was talking to the circle until it came back to me. So you talked about doing internet. I'm assuming it's PPC or is that SEO?
It's primarily Google AdWords, PPC.
Okay, PPC, which can be a highly expensive in competitive markets. So you can be really, really expensive in competitive markets, and PPC can run away from you if you don't have the right people managing it. So, so in the sense of the inbound call from PPC or the inbound lead from PPC and the inbound from radio, how do they compare to each other as far as the
Radio is
quality
much
of lead?
higher quality.
Is
Yeah,
it?
radio is higher quality for sure, without
Okay.
question.
Tell me why.
Because if you're doing, so are we talking PPC running to a web form?
PPC run into a web form or PPC run into a phone number, which will,
Yeah.
for the audience listening, like PPC, if you're spending money on PPC and you're not responding immediately to the web form or answering that phone live, you're throwing money away because they're on to the next person. How is radio different? Well, radio, there probably isn't as much competition. I would say, I'm assuming, but how
There's
else?
virtually no competition. So the reason it's a higher quality lead is when we get that call, we're not going up against 10 other wholesalers that got that same lead. So that within itself is gold, because you know, as I do, it doesn't matter how great the marketing source is. If it's oversaturated, it doesn't matter. Direct mail, we used to crush it on direct mail, right? Like back in 2015 when no one was doing it. And then the reason it dipped was because it just got overcrowded. And so if you can get on a marketing channel like radio that virtually nobody's using, that creates a quality lead simply from the fact of less competition. And then number two, we just find that with radio, because they're listening to a 60-second advertisement, right? And we are literally hitting pain points, right? You know, is your house going into foreclosure? You know, is your house falling apart? Are you a landlord tired of dealing with tenants? Like, we're literally hitting every circumstance for why people call us. And so we feel like when they hear that and feel that, that elicits an emotion that you might not necessarily get through internet if somebody just clicks on like a picture or an advertisement, whatever that looks like. You lose the emotion that's created via radio.
Okay. I see. And you can control your costs a little bit better because you've got a fixed budget and
it's fixed.
It's not random.
It doesn't fluctuate, man. Yeah. You lock in that price, man. You're good. You never get a bill and go, where did that come from? That got away from me.
Right. Which I've heard some horror stories on PPC where somebody hasn't had the right controls in place and it's, suddenly they get this massive bill out of nowhere. So, okay. All right. Fair enough. Anything I didn't ask again, like I'm gonna hit it one more time. Anything that I didn't cover that you feel like needs to be out there?
Man, I think we hit a lot of the good points. Probably if you were to ask my team, and I've asked them all this, why from their perspective, being my team members, whether they're in sales or they're the VA answering the call when it comes in to filter it, or my director of disposition to director of manager to even my COO, they always like, Chris, as you talk about radio, we want to speak up internally and say, the reason that we love radio is because it's not sleazy, and we're the ones that have to deal with all of those hate calls. And you and I as well know that when we do a spam approach, there is a little bit of shame we feel about that because we know that we're pestering people.
I have no shame.
So when my team, what's that?
I have no shame, but anyway, go ahead.
Well, my team feels it. And I can tell you, like my acquisition managers, they fight over the radio lead versus having to deal with some of those other calls. Right. And again, we're dealing about culture. And I don't know about you, but in our heyday of direct mail, I cannot tell you how many times we had to get on a phone with someone on the sales side in tears because they just got 3 back-to-back, like, don't ever mail my, it's crazy what people have the audacity to say over the phone. Right. And we just don't deal with that with radio. And my team is proud of it, and they like to handle those leads because it's just a much better clientele to deal with. They didn't come to you because you strong-armed them through spamming. That's not really a good start to the relationship. They're already kind of eyeing you. You're like the shark.
Mm-hmm. No, I feel you. Like RVMs and texts, I'm really RVMs especially. I have a lot of hesitation about when we've done them and stuff like that. I felt a little weird. Direct mail, for some reason, I don't. But that's because Target and Macy's and every grocery store in town is sending you direct mail. I mean, if my little piece of direct mail makes you upset, it's like you got bigger problems. So
well, it depends on how manipulative you mean it. It's like all yellow, final notice, call me.
I don't do that. I don't do that. Yeah, I don't do that.
I've seen it. It's very manipulative.
Yeah.
You're like, is this the IRS? Like, what's going on?
Yeah. Okay. I get what you're saying. So, but But yeah, no, I feel you because your people do have to handle that, and having somebody calling in that wants your service is a totally different animal.
It's a
So,
different feel.
um,
It rolls down into the team.
yeah, it does. So, okay, very cool. Well, man, tell everybody how to get a hold of you.
Yeah. So again, as I told you, we are coaching people all over the nation to set this up. We launched in December, and people have gone pretty crazy because I always ask this question, and this is one of the main reasons people sign up. I go, ask yourself this: in your market, who do you know that's utilizing radio to find discounted properties? And all of our students come in, they go, you asked that question, and I like called around. I thought about, and I'm like, no one. And that's the whole point. There's virtually no competition. So, man, we provide literally an entire turnkey model, the entire blueprint down to when you should advertise, the ad that you should record, what station you should be on. We actually help you get in, negotiate pricing, like all of that. So I don't know about you, Don, but I like stuff like handed to me on a platter if
Right.
possible. And so we built our program to do that. And so it always starts with due diligence, right? You have questions, you should get those questions answered. So the best place to start is to book a call and talk with our team around questions that you have. And then you have to check to see if your market's open, because we're not going to allow what happened to direct mail to happen to radio. We're going to preserve it. So we're limiting people that come into the program per market. And so you go to wholesalinginc.com/REI radio. Again, wholesalinginc.com/REI radio, and book a call, see if your market's open, and be like me, ask a ton of questions because that's important. See if it's a fit for you.
Okay, perfect. So if you've gotten value from this episode, make sure that you are sharing it out there. You are liking and reviewing it on whatever platform you're listening to. And don't forget to follow me at Don at the real Don Costa on Instagram. You can email questions at donaflipdog.com. And of course, you can always check out beinThisRoom.com if you want to be part of a high level mastermind. Man, I really appreciate having you on today. And thank
Enjoyed
you for your
it.
time. All
Good
right.
conversation. Good
Definitely.
questions too. I liked
Appreciate
it. Playing a little hardball, which I like. I don't.
Well,
I like those softball podcasts I do where they're all easy questions. Give me the tough ones.
I'm legitimately curious about it. So yeah, definitely.